All right, we are here with Chuck this time to check out his character for episode 1, an early winter for the One Shot Wonders. So first, before we get started, Chuck, since this is episode 1, tell us just a little bit about your background in D&D and what brought you here.
Well, I started playing D&D 1976, way back. Uh, we had when I was a kid, typical weekend, we'd sneak into the theater and see Star Wars on Saturday, and then we'd go home and play D&D all night. I mean, that was just what we did. Uh, not, I mean, we went through like the big old satanic panic, when everybody thought it was devil worship and all that stuff, and there were demonstrations against it and everything, and we were just a bunch of kids sitting around imagining, exploring deep dark places and finding lots of gold
So did you
and
start in the first edition?
yeah,
Okay, so the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons?
yeah, AD&D red and blue box set. We used to get modules. You could go buy a module for like $2. It was
Gotcha.
just a cheap paper booklet in a plastic bag. I mean, you get one for $2 or $3, and we could play all weekend on one module. And a lot of times it was rough because original D&D was hard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was really hard. If you got a character up to level 5 or 6, I mean, you were really rocking it. And it's not like nowadays where it's like everybody's got level 15 characters and stuff, and they just level up.
Right. So did
We
you
died a lot.
play any of the editions between Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and 5th edition?
I didn't. I
Okay.
played, but everything I played was homebrew.
Oh, okay.
I had a buddy that he was a DM, and he was a big time D&D junkie, but he had a really good imagination, and he was a smart guy, and he built his own world. And we had this big old 10-foot long, 5-leaf family dining room table, and he turned the whole thing into a big old diorama with little trees and mountains and valleys, and we would get in there, and he created a world of his own with his own magic system where we used mana and things like that. And it was actually kind of neat because there we would create our own spells.
Nice.
Like I had a wizard that specialized, you pick 2 elements, and I specialized in wind and water. And he thought he was going to capture us with a bunch of troops, and I asked him, how much mana would it take for me to dehydrate, a certain area, and he told me, and so I flattened the area out and I put it over the whole platoon of troops, and I dehydrated 150 guys in about 3 seconds, and he had a bunch of dried up husks laying on the ground.
Yeah, I don't think there's a spell like that in 5e, at least not
Yeah,
yet.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it was a great magic system, but because it left a lot open to your imagination of the players, but probably needed a little bit of tweaking because that was an awful lot of power for, I think I was 3rd level at the time.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Awesome. Well, let's take a look here real quick at the character you've made. So I've got Bird here, or B1RD, pulled up. So
B1RD, yes, that's
tell
a
us about
play
him.
that's a play on a joke, believe it or not, because I was in the Navy back in the 80s, and actually I played some 3.5 then. Now that I think about it, or 2, I don't know, played it whatever was out there in 1986. But we used to tease new guys. We'd put them on when they're out on lookout duty, and we'd get them over the microphone, and we'd be like, "Hey, are you awake? How come you haven't reported those B1RDs flying off the starboard side?" And these new guys would freak out. What? Oh my God, what's a B1RD? And well, it's a bird. So that's him being an automaton, a robot and everything. I just kind of figured
Okay. And yeah, I'll explain that
designation.
here real quick for the familiars that aren't familiar with Wildmount. So Chuck plays with me in our primary campaign, which is set in Wildmount. And for those of you that hopefully this isn't a spoiler, but for Critical Role Season 2, the Aeormatons came out, and Chuck wanted to try that even though we're in the Sword Coast. So we're here to experiment and try a bunch of stuff. So the Aeormaton is basically a version of Warforged. But what class did you pick, and what subclass out of Tosh's?
B1RD is a Warlock, and he is a Warlock of the Genie.
All right.
And that the reason for that I went that route. I mean, there's a lot of great Warlock classes,
Mm-hmm.
but he's an Aeormaton. He's not, he doesn't have a soul to capture, or I mean, maybe he does. I don't know, but he's a machine, and so out of all the different deities and patrons out there that would grant power, I asked myself, who's most likely to grant power to a machine? A genie. I mean, a genie's got his own agenda. He wants to find a way out of his bottle. He don't care
Mm-hmm.
who helps him. So I figured a genie's good. I mean, B1RD's an archaeologist,
Okay.
and so along the way he was digging in a musty old tomb, and he found a genie lamp, and he made a deal with the genie, and he became a warlock.
All right. So he carries this relic on him, or
He
what
does.
does that look like?
Yeah. Actually, his it's a lamp. Has to be a lamp for a genie,
Okay.
but he carries it in the form of an arcane focus. That he wears around his neck.
Okay. And so is this genie straight from D&D lore, or do you have a spin on who this genie is that's given him these powers?
No, this is just a generic genie.
Okay. So kind of neutral, evil.
Yeah, yeah. B1RD is fully neutral.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of you'd want to lean towards lawful, because having an electronic mind, things would be really strictly logic based, you know.
Hmm.
So he would tend to be more lawful than chaotic, but it just went straight neutral. I mean, he doesn't. He's got a task that he's focused on,
Okay.
and there really isn't a good or evil agenda to it. He's seeking knowledge, you know. So
So then let's go into that. What brings him to the area for our first episode adventure here?
well, the thing with B1RD is his people were created. They're a technology or a amalgamation of technology and magics, and they're living forever. I mean, he's almost 1400 years old, but the people that created him, their entire race died. They're gone, and he doesn't understand that. And he, on one hand, he kind of wants to bring them back because they're his creators, but really, he just wants to understand how could he stop that from happening to somebody else. So he's
Ha-
seeking the trick, the method, the magic, whatever, to immortality.
Gotcha. Has he met others of his kind before?
He has way back, and he had a friend, I guess is the best word for it, and they agreed to go on this mission together. But because the world was so big, they decided to split up and make a race out of it and decide which and figure out which one of them is going to find the secret to immortality first. So he's here in Wildement, and his partner is off somewhere else, another world, another dimension, another continent. Maybe he's in Faerun, maybe he's in Greyhawk.
Well, yeah. Maybe he doesn't know it, but for this adventure, he's in Faerun.
He may be in
Yeah,
Faerun, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay, great. So we'll I look forward to killing B1RD, and
And we look forward to making that very difficult.
absolutely. So, all right, Chuck. Well, thank you, and we will see you at the main game, and then again for all our other episodes.
Awesome. Talk to you later.
All right.